Hey, Rachel, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful.
Well, let's dive right in. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
I am a sportscaster and motivational speaker. And I think one of the things I'm most proud of is I'm proud of a lot of things that have happened in my sports career. I was the first female host on SiriusXM across their college channels, and a Heisman voter, and I host the college football playoff. I have for the 5 years since its inception. Done a lot of really neat things, and I never set out to do that. But the thing that I'm the most proud of is I'm the founder of a movement that swept the nation, 38 schools in 2.5 years, and we now have our new goal for 2019 and beyond is to get this program changing the narrative in the hands of every high school in the country via virtual training. Because we are literally saving lives. We're talking about mental health and purpose, passion, platform, and lots of things we can talk about later. But I'm a sportscaster that was fortunate enough to meet somebody a gentleman named Kevin Turner, who passed away from ALS, who really taught me the secret to life, I believe, and that's it's not about you. You were not born for you. And so he totally changed the trajectory of my life. And so, as proud as I am of being a Heisman voter and a host and these things, I'm the most proud of the work that I do with changing the narrative.
That is so cool. I had one of our pastors at church did a series not too long ago about it's not about you, and that's simply what it was all about. And it was interesting. He told these stories about walking in the bathroom in the morning and having it's not about you in your kids' bathroom, so that they understand and know it's not about them. Because as we know in today's society, there's a tendency with selfies and everything else for it to be all about them, right? So tell me more about that, the movement and what you're doing there. Obviously, you're addressing a lot of different things, but tell me more.
I will say this and just affirm what you just said. I think in society, whether you're 66 or 16, we are really facing a giant, and that is social media, that is music, culture, magazines, and all of those things are devaluing women. They're devaluing the intimacy, physical intimacy, my gosh, and making it commonplace when as a Christian, I know that's not what it, was created for. And so, and the culture that does tell you it's about you, be happy, make yourself happy, appear happy, make a lot of money, have a lot of things. And so everything that I teach in changing the narrative is going directly against that, and really trying to undo a lot of what's been taught out there. Young men across the country are taught from a young age that they can't talk about their feelings, that it's somehow less masculine, that it's somehow less attractive to talk about if they're struggling. So young men across the country are stuffing down trauma and pain and anger and depression, and they're dying inside. And it's why we're dealing with issues, most pressingly suicide, mental health, those things. And so being a sportscaster for many years, the summer of 2016, I saw a problem. And that was that and I remember doing a serious show that summer from the studios. I live in Nashville, right downtown. And I remember having to back away during a break and just cry, because everything that summer was negative when it came to football. And I've given my life to covering football. And I knew that there were great men that were coaching and playing, but yet they were being overshadowed by the people that were not doing it the right way. And so I thought, I was just audacious enough to believe, what if we could actually change the narrative here? So I created this very simple curriculum, like, who are you away from the football field? What if you never were a football player? And it started with football, but now it's expanded in a lot of other sports and adults as well. But really just what were you created for? And I really challenge the ideas of masculinity. We talk about dating. We talk about chivalry. When I talk to women and queens, as I call them, I say, no one is ever going to respect you if you don't love yourself. Straighten your crown, honey. You are so valuable, more than all the rubies and the diamonds in the world put together 10 times over. You're more valuable than that. And so if you don't love yourself, no one else will love you. And it is just, I'm astounded by what's happened with the life change, and how I judge the effect of this is the lives the people that I keep in touch with. I just got off the phone with one of my kings that is planning to restart his grandmother's orphanage in Zimbabwe. I've got a young king in Minnesota that's on PJ Fleck's team that on his own has been visiting prisons in Minneapolis and telling young Black men that they have a future beyond being incarcerated. I have another guy from SIU that wants to go back to Haiti and help homeless children in Haiti because he got out and actually had a college career. These are the wonderful sides of changing the narrative in college athletics. And I really am an advocate for these players. You know, when people on social media call them thugs or, you know, or troublemakers or whatever it may be, I come to their defense.
You know, I love it. I have 3 daughters, so it hits close to home for me.
Yeah.
And in making the movie, when we made The Father Effect, one of the guys I interviewed, and I'll never forget this, he talked about how at a very young age, the boys, the 5 and 6-year-olds out on the soccer field, how when they fall down and get hurt, most dads' first thing is suck it up, be a man, get up, you're a big boy, yada, yada, yada. And so from a very young age, we're teaching these young boys who eventually grow into men to not show their real emotion, to not feel their real emotion. And so then we get to their men, and then we wonder why they have an issue communicating with their wives, because they've been taught all their lives not to be real, not that they can't cry, that they can show emotion, all of that stuff. And I tell you what, I love what you're doing in that sense, and being able to tell young men, dude, it's okay to be real. It's okay to show emotion. It's okay. And the media already does a horrible job in highlighting all the negative, right?
Yeah. They do. And, you know, what's interesting to me is I've had so many men in my arms, literally in my arms, tell me, I've never told anybody this. I'm just so angry. I was going to kill myself at this time. You know, I was taught never to, just what you said, I was taught never to show emotion. You know, I was taught to stuff it down. And then beyond that, in a dating scene today, we have young women and young men that have told me on college campuses across the country, we are taught over and over to talk about consent. But to talk about our feelings is, nobody talks about their feelings. They don't want to catch feelings. And so we have young men that are broken and young women that are broken, and they're two broken people trying to make a whole person. And I heard some pop song the other day that's like, I'm lonely, you're lonely, let's be lonely together. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what's so wrong with the world. I'm like, two broken people do not make whole people. We got to get it right in our soul. We got to fix what's broken in our soul so that we can be complete for somebody else if that's our destiny. But two broken people does not make a healthy relationship.
Absolutely. So tell me now, let's jump back into kind of your story. How is it that you got to where you are today? Give me kind of fill in the blanks, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I was spoiled by love. I had a lot of people that loved me, and I was born and had, you know, grandmother, and my dad came along in 18 months and adopted me and gave me his last name and life and love, and so I know the wonders of adoption, and I'm a very big adoption proponent. Met my biological father at about 11 or 12 and in touch with him to this day. And then also have a wonderful stepfather that's been like a dad and has really taken over in my life since my adopted father passed away in 2014. And so I kind of joke and say I have my 3 dads, and lots of love there. And so I grew up and knew that I wanted to do something in front of a camera, in front of people, something. And I thought I would be a general assignment reporter. And then I realized house fires and car wrecks just weren't my bag. And so I said, oh, wow, wait a minute. I love sports. I love football. I love Auburn football. I love the Braves. I love the Falcons. Because of my grandmother, we lived in Columbus, Georgia. And I put the 2 and 2 together. I really think God did. And went out and did a baseball interview at Auburn, and then literally just never looked back, been sportscasting ever since.
That is so cool. What's been the biggest difficulty in being a female in mostly a male-dominated industry, if you will?
I think it's the same thing that's a blessing and a challenge, and it's that there are a lot of people out there that don't believe that I should be doing what I'm doing because I'm a female. I'm in sports talk radio. There's not a ton of us in sports talk radio, and I actually love that. I've done television my whole career as well, but on and off. And I have a lot of people that say, "Oh, honey, you're going to make it one day. You're going to be on television." I'm like, no, I have made it. I'm good. Thank you. I enjoy doing radio because you're not judged on anything other than your ability to communicate, your knowledge. They say in radio, you want to inform, entertain, and bond. And so if I do that every single time I'm on the radio on SiriusXM or doing a guest spot, then I've done a good thing. And so for me, the same thing that's a blessing and a curse is the people that don't think that I should be doing it. That's a downer, but I enjoy the opportunity to prove them wrong. There's so many people out there, literally in the hundreds over my career, that have either said something mean to me on Twitter and I'll retweet them and say something super nice back, totally shocks them. Or people that have said, I did not think that a woman should be talking sports. I listened to you. I liked you. You won me over. So and I tell people this all the time in changing the narrative, is don't curse your struggles. What you think is something that is made to break you is actually something that's made to make you. If you will grab hold of your struggles and whatever it is you believe, for me, it's God, and say, okay, God, what is in this for me? Like, what are you trying to teach me? What's the lesson here? I guarantee what you thought was a setback, what you thought was a total letdown, later on will be a setup and a learning lesson for something far greater. And every single time somebody has not wanted to listen to me just based on my gender, it's either taught me something, made me stronger, or I've changed their mind.
Amen. Tell me personally, what's been the biggest struggle that you've had and how did you overcome it?
Personally, the biggest struggle? Wow, yeah. That's a great question. I think obviously this career is one of them. I coach young female sportscasters. I've coached 35 in 5 years, and I tell them, if you're looking for something easy, if you're looking to just gratify your ego, if you're looking to be with your family every holiday, if you're looking for amazing pay, if you're looking for all those things, this maybe is not the career for you. So it's been very hard. I mean, I kind of liken myself. I'm like a cockroach. You can't kill me. I've been doing this for over 10, 13 years, somewhere around in there. And so I'm just, incredibly blessed to break a lot of barriers, to change people's minds. I had a guy calling my radio show when I finally got my first paying job after working almost 3 years for free, on jobs that I had to clock in and clock out. I was a sideline reporter. I was an editor for a Latin paper, a sports editor. I was a NASCAR reporter. I did the War Eagle warm-up show before the official Auburn pregame show on Saturdays. All those things were for free. And so I'd finally gotten my first paying job, and there would be a guy that would call in and he'd say, and in a really redneck, voice, he'd say, "You don't know nothing about football. You ain't never strapped on a helmet." And I said, "Well, yes, I do. I watch it, and I offer a different perspective, and I do know." And so around that time, my co-host said, "Okay, you know what? Why don't you go out to training camp with a local indoor football team?" And it's a professional football team, an indoor football team, championship team. So I started. We bombarded the coach on the air, and he said, it was the longest silence ever. It was like, dun, 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 dun. And he said, you can do this. He said, but we are going to tackle you. You're going to have to sign a waiver. You are going to have to be treated like everybody else. You have to learn the playbook. You have to run wind sprints. You have to do all of that. I lasted for 5 days of 2-a-days, 3 hours in the football in the morning, 3 hours of football at night. I played DB and wide receiver, number 5. They're actually sending me my jersey after all these years. Recently, it's on the way. But I made it. I lasted for 5 days of 2-a-days before I was medically released because I was beat black and blue. Literally, I could barely walk. And that personally was one of the hardest things that I've ever gone through, physically pushing myself. But when I go to a place that where I feel like I want to quit, I can go back there. And if I may, a second part of that is in 2014, I climbed Kilimanjaro for my friend Kevin Turner, client for Kevin to raise money for ALS, and got really sick and, very sick on the way up. We hit a blizzard. A couple of us fell, almost died. I mean, it was really, really hard. And so I went through that. And then in the later part of 2014, I lost my dad unexpectedly. And so that whole year, and then went to a really bad relationship as well. And that whole year, 2014, really, it rocked me to my soul and really made me wonder and get down on my knees and go, who are you? And what are you going to do with this pain?
Isn't it amazing how God shows us in those moments when we think we're not as strong as we are, just how strong we are.
Amen.
And I can only imagine what you've had to go through and overcoming so much of that, and even the balance of family and work. And I've talked to several people about that. How do you balance that? What's the sweet spot there?
Yeah, so for me, it's like I am a natural born multitasker. But God has a way of getting in touch with me and jerking a knot in my chain, as I like to say, an old country saying, when I put too much on the plate and it's like wobbling and nothing's right and I'm not sleeping well and I'm not able to juggle it all. And so if I'm in tune with him, which I think is human, sometimes we get to going so fast and we're here and we're there and we're fragmented that we're not really hearing from God. But when I'm really in tune, that's when he'll tell me, nope, that's not for you. And sometimes he'll say to me, you won't let it go yourself, so I'm going to take it from you. And I'm like, okay, all right. So for me, it is the luxury of being able to plan my schedule and say, no, I want to do that project. No, I don't want to do that project. That's invaluable to me. It's worth more than, silver or gold to be able to have that control of time. And here's what I've learned. And if your listeners take nothing else from this, I have learned that people are my currency. And because of that, I am a millionaire. I mean, I'm a zillionaire, really, because what Kevin taught me and what really my life's lesson is that these moments, my time with you today, the people that will be watching this, like that's my jam. People are my jam. Experiences are my jam. Way more. I don't get excited about material things. I mean, everybody likes to have something nice, but I'd rather get something on a bargain. I mean, I'm just but I've learned the secret to life is people and experiences and loving on people, connecting them and seeing their light just light up. Man, that does it for me. And that's my jam.
And that's so cool. It's in this world of people, and what we're trying to do with this show and just as a mission is help people understand they're not all alone and they're not the only ones struggling with it. And because I think there's so many people with social media, and you look at Facebook and you see only their highlight reel. You don't see the real junk they're going through, right?
Which I think is such a travesty. Do you know what attracts people? Real attracts real. Like attracts like. I tell people all the time, listen, this is one of the tenets of changing the narrative too. Your struggle is not for you. What you are going through, what you're overcoming, what you're working through, if you're brave enough to talk about this, I talk this to guys all the time, if you're brave enough to talk about your bout with depression, if you're brave enough to talk about what happened to you when you were a child and somebody violated you, if you're brave enough to talk about it, I guarantee it, there's somebody in your life, in your path, that needs what you had to say, that needs to hear your experience and will draw strength from it, right? But we have to be brave enough to talk about it. And it's why I'm really big on social media about sharing the ups and the happy stuff and the downs of my life. I try not to share a highlight reel, because, man, I think it's just so false and inaccurate.
Amen. And we're so much on the same page there, because it's interesting when I'm able to speak with groups of men, especially, and I start to share my story, and I talk very openly about alcoholism and all the junk, my depression and all that stuff. And it's insane that what God does, the walls start to come down, and you see guys go, wow, you struggle with that too? I thought I was the only one. and they start to open up about their own junk. And that's the coolest thing in the world, when you can have people, like you said, say it for the first time and they've never told anybody else. It's because they see you as real and trust
Yes.
you and
Yes.
know that, man, she really wants to help me, right?
Yeah. And that is the secret sauce to life. That's what we teach in Changing the Narrative. You can get the Ferrari, you can get the diamond ring, you can get the Manolo Blahniks, you can get the big house or the Mondo great, lawnmower, whatever. You can get the things that you think you want, but nothing compares to the feeling when you genuinely know you have poured into somebody's life and somebody looks in your eyes and they say, I'll never be the same, or thank you for that, or you changed my life, or I'm a better person because of you. That is worth 10 million Ferraris to me. It just doesn't, it doesn't equate. It doesn't equate. It can't compare.
You know what's so fun too, Rachel, is, and I know you probably sense this and know this with your platform and who all you're able to touch, is just the excitement of knowing that God is out there walking before us. That
Yeah.
we may not hear all the stories of the people that He has helped use us to impact. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. It makes
And,
perfect sense.
but when you do hear those stories, maybe a year or two later, you just kind of go, okay, God, thank you. There's a reminder
Yeah.
always that even in those midst of the days that suck and that are hard and everything else, you just kind of go, Lord, He has a way of reminding us that stay the path, stay the course.
Yeah. And I was just listening to a sermon recently from Tony Evans. I love him. And he was just talking about how God's busy up there going, beep, beep, I'm going to connect this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to put this person over here and I'm going to do this. And when we see it all come together in our little human brains, we're like, wow, okay, that makes sense. I see what he was doing there. I recently wrote a piece in the past couple of years about Dabo Swinney and just the providential nature of his life. And it was told by Tommy Bowden, the coach had to be fired for him to get the job. The coach had the wherewithal on the way out of being fired to say, hey, I recommend a young guy named Dabo Swinney to be your next head coach, even though there's head coaches on the staff. And even though he has no head coaching experience, I think this is the guy you should get. So we just have talked about that. And I love that, how it all does make sense, and maybe not it may not make sense to you on this planet, but it will one day. And I had a great reporter friend of mine that I just love, when I'd spoken in Alabama, and I'll never forget this conversation. He called me afterwards and he said, you don't really get it, do you? And I said, what? He said, you think you just touched their lives in there, because I had guys hanging off of me. Literally, they're being called to next meetings and they're telling me, my mom is dying of cancer. I want to be a king. Or I have an unborn child. I want to be a king, because our slogan is be a king, be a queen. And, I'm not being a king. You've inspired me to be a king. You've changed my life. And so this reporter friend of mine, Cecil Hurt, longtime editor at the Tuscaloosa News, covered Bear Bryant. He said, you think you've just touched this young man's life, but if he goes back and he changes the substance abuse or physical abuse or mental abuse in his family, and he breaks that cycle, then his children and his children and his children and his children. And he said, that's where it is, Rachel. You'll never, ever see probably the seeds, just like you said, but you can know in your heart that the things that you planted in their lives and the decisions they've made because of what you've just has been poured into you and you've chosen. See, that's the thing. I don't have to do this, but I a long time ago realized it ain't about me. It's not about me. And so all these things that have happened to me, Romans 8:28, the good things, the bad things, the happy things, the sad things, have all set up for me to share this and affect somebody's life. There are tons of people out there that are walking around that haven't realized yet that they're supposed to share what they've been through. And my goal is to help them realize what you have gone through makes a beautiful story. Share it, help somebody else. And so the only thing that makes me special versus anybody else is I have just decided and been malleable, molded up to say, okay, here I am. Let's just be vulnerable and share it. So it's been amazing. And I do love that. And I often marvel. It's really not a day that goes by where I don't look up and I go, okay, that was you, God. I get it now.